Peace and blessings to each and every single one of you. I thank you for pulling up. I hope everybody's doing extremely well this week. Staying hydrated, staying out of this heat as much as possible. You see the title. It's an article that I'm going to read, and I want to share my thoughts on it afterwards. The reason why I'm bringing this particular story up is because in most cases, historical events as such are typically life-changing for the betterment of humanity. No matter what the capacity of the situation was. Boston Tea Party, World War III, assassination of Kennedy. All of these different time periods have created a ripple effect that will forever transcend the way the world operates and moves, from the children to the adults. Stories like this, however, get severely overlooked and is not appreciated for truly what it is and what it represents. You might not like what I'm going to read. You might not even be particularly favored or favorable towards this story. Rest assured, when I came across this, I was not flattered or enthused by the heinous acts that transpired here. But history seems to have a way of peeking its head out over the veil. July 29th, 1910. Slocum massacre in Texas. What does this mean to you? Do you really care about anything in this? Do you understand the significance behind this story? All questions I pose to you after I read this article. Now, if you have any thoughts or any comments concerning this, feel free to leave your remarks, like, share, subscribe to the channel. I'm not here to cater to anyone. I want to talk about what I want to talk about. I want to cover the things that mean something to me, that mean something to the community. There's a voice behind stories like this, and they get silenced every day by our government. People tend to want to brush under the rug things that happen because it sheds light on their character. It sheds light on the things that they have going on in the world. They don't want to be seen for what it really is. They don't want to be held accountable. Now, I'm going to start reading this article, and I'm going to share my thoughts on it, and we're going to leave it there. Now, this particular story that I'm reading, it happened in Texas. Let's begin. The 1910 Slocum massacre in East Texas officially saw between 8 and 22 African Americans killed. The evidence suggests casualties were 10 times these amounts. Yet the massacre has become a dirty Lone Star secret remarkable more for the inattention it has received than for its remembrance. Unlike most Texas communities in the early 20th century, the unincorporated town of Slocum, like Rosewood, Florida, was largely African American, with several black citizens considerably propertied and a few owning stores and other businesses. This alone in parts of the South might have been enough to foment violence, but around Slocum, roughly 100 miles east of Waco, there were other issues, according to newspaper reports and other sometimes conflicting accounts of the massacre. When a white man reportedly tried to collect a dispute check from a well-regarded black citizen, a confrontation occurred. Hard feelings lingered when a regional road construction foreman put an African American in charge of rounding up help for local road improvements. A prominent white citizen named Jim Spurger was infuriated and became an agitator. We're going to get there. Rumors spread, warning of threats against Anglo citizens and plans for race riots. White malcontents manipulated the local Anglo population, and on July 29th, white hysteria transmogrified into bloodshed, stoked and goaded by Spurger and others. The collection of white mobs made up of Slocum locals and heavily armed white residents from all over Anderson County roamed through the area in groups of 6 or 7 or in mobs of 30 to 40. According to some reports, up to 200 members of the mobs engaged in what authorities later termed a pot shot. I'm still trying to figure out what that means. Walk with me. Occasion, firing on black citizens at will. They moved from road to road and cabin to cabin, shooting down African Americans in their tracks. Survivors of the bloodshed spread the word, and African Americans began fleeing. The white mobs followed blacks into the surrounding forests and marshes and shot many victims in the back as they fled. Several bodies were discovered with bundles of clothing and personal effects at their sides. When reporters gathered on July 31st, up to 2 dozen murders had been reported, but local authorities had only 8 bodies. Sheriff Black said it would be difficult to find out just how many were killed because they were scattered all over the woods. The buzzards would find many of the victims first. Men were going about killing Negroes as fast as they could find them. Sheriff Black told the New York Times, "These Negroes have done no wrong that I can discover." Black continued, "I don't know how many were in the mob, but there have been 200 or 300. They hunted the Negroes down like sheep." In every month for the 6 months leading up to the Slocum massacre, an African American in the East Texas region was executed by a white mob based on allegations alone. No trials, no juries, simply white verdicts. After the lynching of Allen Brooks just 4 months prior to the Slocum massacre, a photograph of his hanging body and a crowd of 1,000 spectators was made into a postcard that was mailed to friends and family. And these injustices weren't exceptions to the rule. Rather, they were the rule under which African Americans lived and died in that part of the world. On August 13th, 1990, a group of more than 150 African American ministers from Washington, D.C. sent a letter to President Taft regarding the Slocum massacre. In the letter, the committee implored President Taft to use the powers of his great office to suppress lynchings, murder, and other forms of lawlessness, and to do something to make human life more valuable and law more universally respected. The Attorney General responded on August 24 with a succinct letter stating, "The protection of life and property is generally a duty devolving up the state authorities," and continued, "The letter and petition deal with the subject of the treatment of colored persons generally and therefore furnish no facts which would warrant this department in taking any steps to redress the wrongs complained of." At the initial grand jury hearing of the suspects charged in the Slocum atrocity, nearly every remaining resident was subpoenaed. Some refused to testify and were arrested. By the time the grand jury findings were reported on August 17th, several hundred witnesses had been examined. Though 11 men were initially arrested, 7 were indicted. The grand jury moved the trial to Harris County, distrusting the potential jury of peers the defendants might receive in Anderson County. The indictments received no interest or justice in Harris County. Eventually, all those charged were released and none of the indictments were ever prosecuted. It goes on to talk about how they inevitably took over that town, changed it, gentrified it, made it into the way that they wanted it to be. What I mean, you see, you read stories like this, and it's like, why wasn't this spoke about enough? Our president, our representatives, the ones, even to this day, that are responsible for our well-being, for our best interest. reflections of this. My thoughts and prayers go out to the families, the ones who came afterwards that survived this horror and had to find a way to grieve and create a generation that didn't live in bitterness or hate because of the way their ancestors were treated. This is 1910. We're in 2023, and the only thing that's different from then to now is they know how to cover it up more. I was disgusted at this whole story. Our kind, we are hard workers. We bleed and sweat for the things that we want. Just wanted our own fair shot. And we get gunned down and hunted. Why? What was the point? Now we fast forward, and it looks like nothing has ever changed. Y'all let me know what y'all think about this story. I'll leave a link in the description box so you can go check it out for yourself. But it's very sad, and I'm over it. How they try to keep this out of school, out the history books. How no one really talks about these particular stories, but they'll cover everything else. And if you don't think there's anything significant or important about this particular story, then I question your humanity. I question your heart. I question your purpose. No one deserves to lose their life that way. And the injustices, the fact that all of these people got away with it, no one did anything about it. And the 150 black men who stepped up and tried their best to bring, some type of resolve, got just shut down completely by the president at the time and his representatives. Yeah. This is no cap all world, man. We gotta do better, people. We really do gotta do better. You can act and pretend like all these things that's happening in our world is not important, whether it's from the past or it's from the present. But the fact of the matter is, these things desperately, severely affect us all in some way or form or fashion, because there's people who still walk around with this racist attitude, this mindset that we're dirt beneath their feet. They're constantly working their way into our homes, into our families, into all of our livelihoods, and they're killing us from the outside and from the inside. And they're doing it covertly. They're doing it subliminally. We out here killing each other. And what's more interesting about it is, notice how they will address the killings and the violence and the savagery of black men on black men, but they won't highlight and showcase all of the white shootings, the Hispanic shootings. If I hadn't came across, shout out to Lisa, man, for pointing this out to me, because had she not did that, I wouldn't have even known about this story at all. Slocum massacre, 1910. Look it up for yourself, and then you come back to me and tell me that you can just turn the other cheek and act as if this never happened.